In the shadowed underbelly of a crumbling plantation, a shovel strikes wood echoing like a whisper from hell. Inside, rows of yellowed teeth, wrapped in faded cloth, each one a stolen soul from the damned. What if your essence could be trapped forever, cursed by a master's unholy right? Feel the chill, this is no legend. It's the divine retribution buried in New Orleans' blood-soaked soil. The fog clung to the Mississippi like a shroud, thick and unyielding, as if the river itself exhaled the ghosts of forgotten sins. It was March 1847, and the air in New Orleans hummed with the distant clamor of steamboats unloading their human cargo at the docks, chains rattling, voices muffled in despair. The city was a labyrinth of contradictions. Opulent Creole mansions with wrought iron balconies overlooking narrow streets where the scent of jasmine warred with the rot of decay. Beneath it all pulsed a darker rhythm, one woven from the stolen lives of the enslaved, their spiritual beliefs twisted into tools of torment. This was a place where the veil between the living and the divine fell perilously thin, where acts of cruelty echoed as judgments from on high. At the heart of this enigma stood the Delacroix estate, once a symbol of refined prosperity, now a vessel for unearthed damnation. The renovation crew, a band of weary Irish immigrants fleeing the skeletal grip of famine back home, had been tasked with dismantling the dilapidated slave quarters. These were no mere shacks, they were prisons of pine and despair, their dirt floors etched with the footprints of generations bound in chains. Patrick O'Leary, the foreman, a broad-shouldered man with calloused hands and eyes shadowed by loss, directed his men with a quiet authority born from survival. "Dig steady, lads," he'd mutter, his brogue cutting through the humid air. "The ground here's soft as a grave." The first strike came without warning. Young Liam Donnelly's shovel thudded against something unyielding, sending a vibration up his arm like a warning from the earth itself. "Wood," he whispered, his voice laced with a mix of curiosity and dread. The men gathered, their breaths shallow in the oppressive heat, as they unearthed the box, crude, weathered cypress, about 2 feet long, its lid nailed shut with iron forged in an era of unbridled tyranny. O'Leary pried it open with a crowbar, the wood groaning in protest, as if reluctant to reveal its secrets. Inside lay not treasure, but terror, dozens of small bundles, each swathed in faded cotton cloth, tied with twine that had brittled over decades. Unwrapping one, O'Leary's fingers trembled as a single human tooth tumbled into his palm, yellowed enamel, roots stained dark with what could only be ancient blood. A molar, perhaps from a man who'd toiled under the relentless sun, or a child whose cries had long faded into silence. The men stared, the weight of it pressing on their souls like divine condemnation. One by one, they opened the bundles, each revealing a tooth, preserved as relics of some profane sacrament. By day's end, 3 such boxes had surfaced, all identical, all buried precisely 3 feet deep, as if placed there by a hand guided by meticulous malice. Word spread like fever through the estate, reaching the ears of Christophe Delacroix, the current patriarch, a man of 53, cloaked in the veneer of culture and piety. He was a fixture in New Orleans' elite circles, hosting salons where philosophers debated over crystal glasses of absinthe, quoting Voltaire and Rousseau while ignoring the biblical mandates of mercy and justice. His wife, Elise, moved through society like a ghost in silk, her lineage tracing back to French nobility, her soirees legendary for their extravagance. Yet behind closed doors, whispers hinted at a family legacy stained by more than prosperity, rumors of vanished souls, of ledgers that didn't add up. Christophe's face paled when O'Leary presented the findings in the dim light of his study, the room heavy with the scent of leather-bound tomes and cigar smoke. "What manner of devilry is this?" he murmured, his voice cracking like parchment. The boxes mocked him, their contents a tangible link to his grandfather, Jean-Baptiste Delacroix, a refugee from the Haitian Revolution's fiery upheaval. Jean-Baptiste had fled Saint-Domingue in 1791, carrying not just gold, but 12 enslaved souls, men, women, and children torn from African shores, their spiritual worlds rich with ancestors and orishas, now bent to his will. As the crew pressed on, urged by Christophe's reluctant command, the discoveries multiplied. 17 more boxes emerged over the following days, each a coffin for stolen essences. The pattern was chilling, arranged in deliberate rows beneath the quarters, the oldest nearest the foundations laid in the late 18th century. There were decayed to splinters, nails hand-forged in blacksmith fires long extinguished. Newer ones, from the early 1820s, showed less rot, their pine still bearing faint tool marks. Inside, the teeth varied: adult incisors worn from grinding sugarcane, delicate milk teeth from infants, each wrapped with care that bordered on ritualistic obsession. Some bundles held scraps of paper, ink faded to spectral whispers, perhaps names, dates, or incantations invoking curses of binding. The estate's enslaved workers, those who remained in 1847, watched from the shadows with eyes wide in ancestral fear. Among them was Marie Louise, an elderly woman born on the property in 1805, her back scarred from whips, her spirit unbroken yet haunted. She remembered tales from her mother, whispers of the tooth-taker Jean-Baptiste's method of dominion. He'd say the tooth holds your soul, she'd confide later to a trusted few, her voice trembling. Lose it to him, and you're chained forever, even in death. Run, and he'd call your spirit back with voodoo twisted from our own gods. It was psychological warfare cloaked in spirituality, exploiting the deep African beliefs in ancestral power in essence, merging them with Catholic notions of sin and eternal damnation. Jean-Baptiste, a lapsed Catholic himself, had weaponized this fusion, turning teeth into talismans of control, symbols of guilt extracted, sins confessed through pain. City records, dusted off in hushed inquiries, revealed the estate's dark arithmetic, between 1791 and 1823. Over 40 enslaved individuals had vanished without trace, no sales documented, no deaths recorded, no escapes noted in patrol's logs. Some reappeared months later in distant markets, their memories fractured, eyes vacant as if their very wills had been plucked like those teeth. Others simply dissolved into the ether, their absences chalked up to fever or flight. But the boxes suggested something more calculated, a system of terror designed to instill obedience through spiritual dread, ensuring no rebellion like the one that had scorched Haiti. Father Etienne Moreau, a Jesuit priest serving the Creole underbelly, had caught wind of these anomalies years prior. In 1845, an ailing enslaved man from a neighboring plantation confessed to him under the seal of sacrament, "The Delacroix master, he takes teeth to bind us to hell. It's not just pain, it's stealing your light from God." Moreau, a man of scholarly bent with a library of forbidden tomes on African spiritualism and biblical exorcisms, noted these in his private diary. He saw in them echoes of Old Testament justice, teeth for teeth, as in Exodus, but perverted into tools of human tyranny. What if this is divine retribution manifesting, he'd pondered, the idea chilling him to his core. The practice blurred lines between mortal control and supernatural curse, suggesting the Delacroix line had played God, inviting heavenly wrath. As the excavation deepened, the air grew heavier, charged with an otherworldly tension. The Irish crew, devout Catholics themselves, crossed themselves at each unearthing, murmuring prayers against evil. O'Leary dreamed of spectral figures rising from the soil, mouths agape in silent screams, teeth missing like voids in their souls. Young Donnelly fell ill with a fever that mirrored Yellow Jack, though the season was wrong. Whispers among the men called it a curse from disturbed graves. Christophe, sequestered in his study, pored over family archives by candlelight, the flames dancing. Shadows across walls adorned with crucifixes and portraits of stern ancestors. His hands shook as he uncovered ledgers hinting at the ritual, entries for extractions amid costs for sugar and whips. The moral weight crushed him, guilt inherited, sins of the fathers visiting upon the sons, as Ezekiel warned. He confided in no one, not even Elise, whose own family ties to colonial cruelty made her complicit in silence. Prominent New Orleans families, linked by marriage and commerce, moved swiftly to suppress the news. Whispers in smoke-filled parlors, bury it deeper. Let the past rot. But on the 9th day, amid the oldest quarter's foundations, the crew struck the anomaly, a larger box of polished mahogany, locked with brass that gleamed dully through corrosion. It resisted at first, as if sealed by infernal pact, but yielded to persistent force. Inside, not just teeth, nearly 100, from infants' pearls to elders' stumps, but a leather-bound journal, its cover embossed JBD. The pages, preserved in wax-sealed envelopes, spilled forth in elegant French script, dated entries from 1791 onward, detailing the ritual's genesis. Jean-Baptiste's words leaped from the page like accusations. "In Saint-Domingue, I witnessed the power of their lowest spirits that bind and curse. Here, I adapt it. The tooth is the root of the soul, as the Africans believe. Extract it, hold it, and they are mine eternally. No escape, no rebellion. God forgives the strong." Entries catalogued each victim, names like Kofi, brought from Senegal in 1795, his molar taken amid screams, or young Amina, aged 8, her incisor wrapped as she wept for her mother. He described the extractions, performed in a candle-lit shed, pliers heated over flame, no mercy given, framed as necessary for order, a twisted sacrament echoing communion's body and blood. Christophe read through the night, his soul unraveling. The journal revealed not just method, but motive. Fear from Haiti's uprising, where enslaved masses had invoked their gods to overthrow masters. Jean-Baptiste, scarred by loss, had forged this chain of teeth to prevent history's repeat, each tooth a symbol of dominion, a barrier against divine justice. But in documenting it, he damned his lineage, turning family heirloom into evidence of abomination. As dawn broke, pale and unforgiving, Christophe collapsed, summoning Dr. Armand Duval, a trusted physician schooled in Paris' enlightened halls yet versed in Creole mysticism. "The sins, they live," Christophe gasped, journal clutched like a Bible of horrors. Duval, piecing together the fragments, recognized the psychological depth, a blend of voodoo essence capture and biblical symbolism of judgment. Teeth, after all, represented strength in Scripture, Samson's jawbone weapon, or the grinding of teeth in hell's outer darkness. The discovery rippled outward, challenging antebellum Louisiana's facade. Historians, poring over similar whispers from other plantations, saw patterns, teeth rituals in isolated cases, but none so systematized. It exposed slavery's underbelly, not just physical chains, but spiritual shackles, exploiting faith to deepen despair. The boxes weren't mere artifacts, they were indictments, echoes of Proverbs' warning, "The wicked flee when no one pursues, but the righteous are bold as a lion." Had the Delacroix fled their own consciences? Yet suppression loomed. Influential allies, bankers, politicians tied to cotton empires, convened in secret, deeming the truth too explosive. In a city where Mardi Gras masked deeper vices, this could ignite unrest, blurring lines between master and slave and shared human frailty. Father Moreau, learning of the journal through confessional leaks, prayed for revelation, "Let this be the sword of justice, piercing the heart of iniquity." The estate fell silent, work halted, men paid off with threats veiled as bonuses. But the teeth lingered in memory, symbols of souls unbound at last, perhaps wandering now, seeking redemption or revenge. In the humid nights, one could almost hear them, faint chattering, like judgments from the grave, reminding that divine retribution waits not in haste, but in eternal patience. New Orleans, with its cathedrals and crypts, stood as witness. The river flowed on, carrying secrets downstream, but some sins refused to drown. The Delacroix legacy, once gilded, now cracked under the weight of unearthed truth, a chilling testament that power built on stolen essences crumbles, leaving only hollow remnants for the winds of justice to scatter. The candle flickered erratically in Christophe Delacroix's study, casting elongated shadows that danced like accusing specters across the walls. The air was thick with the scent of aged paper and desperation, as if the very room exhaled the sins of ancestors. It was late March 1847, and the journal lay open on the mahogany desk, a relic from the grave, its leather cover cracked like parched earth, embossed with the initials JBD. Jean-Baptiste Delacroix's words stared back, not in frantic scrawls, but in precise, almost clinical French, as though documenting a botanical experiment rather than the systematic shattering of human spirits. Dr. Armand Duval, summoned in the dead of night, sat across from Christophe, his face etched with the pallor of a man confronting hell's ledger. "Show me," Duval had demanded, his voice a hoarse whisper, hands steady from years of wielding scalpels but now trembling as he turned the pages. The first entry, dated November 3, 1791, leaped out like a serpent's strike. "In the wake of Saint Domingue's chaos, where spirits and rebellions intertwined, I institute a right of dominion. Each arrival shall surrender a tooth, the vessel of their essence, as per their heathen beliefs. Held in my grasp, it ensures no flight, no defiance. Fear of the soul's captivity surpasses chains of iron." Below, details of the inaugural victim, a man named Kwame, dragged from Haitian shores, his molar extracted amid guttural cries, no laudanum to dull the agony. Jean-Baptiste noted the blood's metallic tang, the victim's wide-eyed terror as he was told, through a Creole interpreter, that his soul now resided in that tiny, gleaming relic, forever tethered to the Delacroix will. As Duval read on, the journal unfolded a tapestry of torment spanning 3 decades, each entry a thread in a web of psychological enslavement. Over 300 souls catalogued. Names like Ajoa from the Gold Coast, aged 19, her incisor taken on a sweltering August eve in 1795, or young Tomas, barely 14, from the Caribbean Isles, his canine wrenched free in 1802 after a failed whisper of rebellion. Jean-Baptiste's observations were detached, scientific,
post-extraction, compliance rises 80%.
Fear manifests in averted gazes, whispered prayers to forgotten gods. He drew from African spiritual traditions Vodou's emphasis on bodily talismans, where hair or nails could summon curses, and twisted them with Old Testament echoes of dominion, man over man, as if Genesis sanctioned his tyranny. Teeth became symbols of original sin, extracted to purge defiance, stored as trophies of divine right control. But the horror deepened in entries about the deceased. Death on the estate, from the relentless grind of sugarcane fields, where backs broke under whips and sun, or from yellow fever's merciless sweep, was no release. Elias, 28, perished in harvest mishap, September 1804.
4 teeth harvested pre-burial, essence secured in box 9. Spirit bound eternally, lest it stir unrest among the living.
Jean-Baptiste believed, or professed, that these post-mortem takings prevented ancestral spirits from aiding the living in revolt, echoing Haitian uprisings where Loa gods fuel liberation.
Skeletons interred in unmarked pits, stripped of dignity, their mouths violated even in repose.
Duval's stomach churned, he pictured the scenes, moonlight graveside rituals, pliers glinting under stars, the soft thud of earth over hollow jaws.
"This is abomination,"
he muttered, "a perversion of God's creation, turning flesh into fetters for the soul." Christophe paced the room, his silk robe whispering against the floorboards, face gaunt under the weight of inherited guilt. "My grandfather, he spread this poison."
Indeed, the journal revealed a network of complicity. Entries referenced consultations with fellow planters. Visited by Monsieur Beaumont, 1803. Detailed the right's efficacy he adopts for his Plaquemines holdings.
Letters tucked between pages confirmed it. Missives from Etienne Thibault in 1811, your preservation techniques, cloth imbued with herbs to ward decay, prove invaluable. My workforce quakes at the mere mention. Jean-Baptiste had monetized misery, charging fees for management consultations, sums rivaling a season's crop yield.
By 1815, whispers of the tooth-binding rippled through Louisiana's elite, from Baton Rouge's bayous to Natchez' bluffs, a subterranean current of control exploiting enslaved faiths and ancestral bonds and spiritual continuity.
It was efficient tyranny, fewer escapes, heightened productivity, all without the mess of constant floggings. But spiritually, it was damnation, robbing not just freedom, but the hope of afterlife peace, as if echoing Matthew's weeping and gnashing of teeth in outer darkness.
Duval pressed Christophe, "Did your father continue this sacrilege?" The answer came haltingly, laced with denial and dread.
Upon Jean-Baptiste's death in 1823, his son, Christophe's father, Henri, unearthed the journal in a locked chest, alongside a sealed missive: "Son, sustain the right, souls unbound in by chaos, as in Haiti." Henri, a man of wavering faith raised in Catholic cloisters, recoiled.
"Blasphemy," he'd scrawled in the margins, his hand unsteady.
He halted extractions immediately, but destruction proved elusive. Some boxes he consigned to the Mississippi's muddy depths, teeth scattering like cursed seeds. Yet others, and the journal, he couldn't obliterate, perhaps a subconscious penance, or fear that erasing sins invited greater divine wrath. In 1824, under cover of a storm-lashed night, he buried the remnants beneath the slave quarters, the ground soft from rain, servants sworn to silence under threat of sale.
"Let them rest near their kin," Henri noted privately, a twisted atonement, as if proximity could mend fractured spirits. Christophe swore ignorance, "I knew nothing until the shovel struck wood."
But Duval's eyes narrowed, in the flickering light, doubt crept in like fog.
How could prosperity's heir remain blind? The estate's ledgers, now sprawled across the desk, painted complicity. Pre-1823 profits soared, sugar yields double the norm, escapes negligible. Post-ritual?
Declines sharp as a blade, more flights to maroon communities in the swamps, subtle sabotages in the fields, a spiritual uncoiling.
Henri struggled, selling acreage to stave ruin, his salons dimming from grandeur to ghosts.
Christophe inherited a faded empire in 1839, his refinement a veneer overwrought. Our wealth, he confessed, voice-breaking, was forged in stolen souls. It was biblical irony, Proverbs warning that riches from wickedness melt away, divine justice eroding foundations built on sand.
The crisis enveloped the family like a noose.
Duval, bound by Hippocratic oath yet tormented by moral imperative, demanded action. This demands light, Christophe. Souls cry for justice.
But scandal loomed, a web implicating Beaumonts, Thibauts, pillars of New Orleans society.
Christophe pleaded for a week's grace. "Let me unearth the full truth, lest we damn innocence with the guilty."
Duval acquiesced, but the clock ticked, each second a hammer on anvil.
Christophe delved into archives with feverish zeal, dust motes swirling in lantern glow like restless phantoms. Correspondence emerged, planters lauding the right's revolutionary psychology, one 1807 letter from Beaumont gushing, "Your method chains the mind where whips fail the body." Productivity ascends, spirits descend to obedience.
Financial trails revealed consulting bounties, hundreds in gold for rituals taught under magnolia shade.
Deeper, the far-field ledger, a desolate plot at property's edge, oaks standing sentinel like judgmental angels. Here, vanished souls tallied, not sold, but perished.
Bodies consigned sans right or record.
Christophe, with O'Leary and crew, ventured there at dusk, the air humming with cicadas' dirge.
Probing rods sank into yielding earth, 17 soft spots, graves whispering secrets. Excavating one, a fragile skeleton, child-sized, ribs curved like pleas, jawbone marred by absent teeth.
"God forgive us," Christophe wept, reburying with a crude cross, the act a hollow absolution. Rumors, meanwhile, slithered through New Orleans like river currents.
O'Leary's men, lips loosened by ale in dockside taverns, spun tales, boxes of bones, voodoo curses. Irish enclaves buzzed, hundreds dead, hearts harvested for dark arts. The French Quarter absorbed them, markets alive with Creole whispers blending fact with folklore. Abolitionists caught wind, a nascent cadre of free blacks, Yankee idealists, decrying bondage as barbarity.
Enter Elias Hawthorne, a 29-year-old attorney from Philadelphia, fiery-eyed reformer in starched collars, drawn south to dismantle chains through law.
This, he declared to confidants, exposes slavery's infernal core, not mere toil, but soul theft. Hawthorne investigated relentlessly, interrogating workers under gas lamps, their accents thick with brogue and burden. Teeth, sir, hundreds, wrapped like relics. Delacroix rebuffed meetings, gates barred like fortress walls.
Undeterred, Hawthorne petitioned officials, crimes against humanity demand scrutiny, time no barrier.
Resistance mounted, City Hall a bastion of slave interests, economy greased by auction blocks.
But an ally emerged, Father Etienne Moreau, the Jesuit whose diary held Marie-Louise's confession. The right twisted votives sacred into satanic, he confided to Hawthorne, violating confessionals subtly for justice's sake.
Psalms speak of teeth shattered in judgment, here, man's hubris invites it.
Pressure mounted as Celeste Moreau, no relation to the priest, a free woman of color in her 70s, stepped from shadows. Seamstress in the quarter, her hands gnarled from needles, eyes sharp as memory's blade. Born enslaved in Saint-Domingue, ferried to Delacroix at 13, she recounted to Hawthorne in a dimly lit parlor, voice steady yet laced with ancient pain, the courtyard baked under sun, mosquitoes feasting like demons. Master gathered us, 15 souls, trembling. "Your tooth is your spirit," he intoned through translator. "I hold you, alive or dead." The extraction, pliers cold against flesh, blood's copper flood, screams echoing off whitewashed walls. We believed our traditions taught parts of body bind the soul. Hair for spells, nails for curses. This? Eternal prison. Even in freedom, bought years later by skill, the void in her smile haunted redemption incomplete, ancestors distant. Celeste's deposition, sworn before notary, humanized the journal's cold calculus. It illuminated the right's genius of evil, leveraging African cosmologies where wholeness enabled passage to realms beyond against captives, merging with Christian damnation doctrines. Escape meant soul fracture, death, ghostly servitude. We toiled not just in fear of lash, she said, but of forever lost peace. As the week waned, Christophe confronted Duval, the web spreads wide, exposing it risks conflagration. But silence was complicity, a sin against Leviticus' call for restitution. Rumors swelled to scandal's brink, abolitionists rallying, authorities stirring under public gaze. The estate, once haven, now felt cursed, winds through quarters moaning like unbound spirits, demanding reckoning. New Orleans teetered, its Creole soul blended French piety, Spanish intrigue, African rhythms fractured by revelation. The teeth, symbols of dominion, now harbingers of downfall, echoing Ecclesiastes, vanity of vanities, all built on oppression crumbles. Divine retribution loomed, not in fire, but in truth's inexorable light, souls stirring from earthen bonds to claim justice at last. The sun beat down mercilessly on the Delacroix estate's courtyard that late summer day in 1791, the air thick with the buzz of mosquitoes and the metallic tang of impending blood. Celeste Moreau, barely 13, stood trembling among 15 newly arrived souls, chains still chafing their ankles from the brutal Atlantic passage. Jean-Baptiste Delacroix paced before them, his voice sharp through the Creole translator. "Your body is mine." "Your spirit?" "That too." He gestured to the thin physician beside him, a gaunt figure with eyes like polished obsidian, devoid of warmth. Dr. Etienne Rousseau gripped his pliers, crude, unforged iron glinting in the light, as overseers pinned the first victim down. Celeste watched in frozen horror as the tool clamped, twisted, yanked. The crack echoed like splintering bone, followed by a guttural wail that pierced the humid veil. Blood sprayed, pooling on the packed earth, as the physician worked with mechanical precision, no pause for mercy, no cloth for comfort. One by one, they fell, adults convulsing, children sobbing. When her turn came, Celeste's legs buckled. Rough hands forced her to the ground, knees grinding into dirt. The pliers bit cold against her gum, pain exploded white-hot as the root tore free, jaw fracturing with a sickening pop. Blood flooded her mouth, choking her cries. "Bite this," an overseer grunted, shoving rag into the void. Days later, her face swelled grotesque, infection festering, but the physical agony paled against the spiritual wound. "Your essence is mine now," Jean-Baptiste had intoned. "Defy me, and I'll curse you through it. Flee, and it'll drag you back even in death." For years, Celeste believed it utterly. Rooted in Vodou's sacred truths, where bodily fragments could bind or banish spirits, this rite twisted faith into fetters. Escape attempts? Always thwarted, runaways hauled back with vacant eyes, whispering of unseen pulls. Disobedience? Plagued by curses, fevers, falls, fates too coincidental. It echoed biblical torment, the gnashing of teeth in Matthew's hell, but engineered by mortal hands playing God. Yet resistance flickered, defiant sparks in the dark. Not all bowed to the ritual's spell. American-born enslaved, less tethered to ancestral cosmologies, saw it for the cruel deception it was, a master's mind game cloaked in mysticism. Celeste whispered of 3 daring bids between 1791 and 1803, nocturnal creeps into the main house's locked chamber, where boxes gleamed on shelves like profane altars. All failed. In 1797, Pierre, a strong field hand from Senegal, pried the door under moonless sky. Caught red-handed, he faced spectacle punishment, lashed raw before the assembled quarters, skin flayed in rhythmic cracks, then sold to Caribbean hells where sugar mills devoured lives in seasons, not decades. "Reclaim your soul," Jean-Baptiste sneered publicly, "and lose your body." The message seared deeper than whips, submission or annihilation. Celeste's freedom came unexpectedly in 1803, at 24, a manumission paper in meager coins for loyalty. Jean-Baptiste's benevolence? More likely theater for society, proving his enlightened mastery. She fled to New Orleans' bustling quarters, needle in hand, stitching a life as seamstress, marriage, children, a modest shop fragrant with fabrics. But the void in her smile ached eternally, a phantom root pulsing reminders. Silence cloaked her past until 1847's rumors stirred ghosts, boxes unearthed, teeth speaking from soil. Approaching Elias Hawthorne, the resolute abolitionist attorney, she offered her voice. Let them know the theft wasn't just of flesh, she urged in his shadowed office, eyes fierce with decades-held fire. Hawthorne grasped the power, Celeste humanized the horror, transforming abstract relics into lived torment. Her sworn deposition painted vivid strokes, pain's sear, belief's chains, resistance's cost, impossible to dismiss as eccentricity. Confronted, Christophe Delacroix crumbled under Hawthorne's gaze and authority's scrutiny. "My father, he buried them." In 1823, upon Jean-Baptiste's death, Henri unearthed the journal and boxes in a concealed vault. Revulsion gripped him, margins scrawled with "abomination against God," yet full destruction eluded. Some boxes fed to river flames, ashes swallowed by currents symbolizing fleeting absolution. The rest, with journal, interred in 1824's storm-drenched night, trusted servants digging beneath quarters, earth-soft as guilt. Why there? Christophe pondered, symbolic restitution, returning essences to kin?
or cunning concealment amid disposable shacks, where no renovation would probe. Hawthorne pounced, burial betrayed knowledge of wrong, hiding sins while clinging to them, a profane half-penance echoing Cain's unmarked grave. Demands escalated, medical scrutiny of teeth, subpoenaed ledgers, exhumation of the far field graves. Delacroix lawyers countered fiercely, ancient private matters, under obsolete norms. The dead need no justice, the living, no scandal. Legal wrangling stretched through humid spring into blistering summer 1847. Boxes sequestered in dockside warehouse, Dr. Armand Duval, tormented friend, catalogued, hundreds of teeth from 200-plus souls. Revelations chilled, many post-mortem, sockets dry and altered, others brutal from life, shattered roots, jaw shards clinging, infection scars. No skilled dentistry, Rousseau's force prioritized speed over sanctity, pain as pedagogy. Violation deliberate, Duval reported, voice grave. Bodies not owned, but desecrated, to teach irrelevance of suffering. It evoked Leviticus eye for eye perverted, retribution not divine, but human hubris. Testimonies swelled like Mississippi floods. Augustus Porter, escaped to Ohio decades prior, returned. Gray-haired, master in placements took my molar at 16, boxed on desk, a constant glare saying I own your honesty. Visual torment chained minds where irons failed body. Hannah Brossard, freed laundress, recalled St. Charles jar, gleaming teeth as silent sentinels, terrorizing generations sans personal extraction. Benjamin Loron, carpenter of color, unveiled Rousseau's legacy, father's tales of the doctor's technique, pliers and chisel, no mercy, training acolytes for profit. Service to order, Rousseau boasted, conscience void. These voices painted a web, not isolated madness, but networked tyranny, planters sharing innovations for profit, physicians profiting from pain. Hawthorne's July report to council, damning dossier with Celeste's visceral account, Porter's escape narrative, Brossard's jar horror, Lawrence practitioner expose, journal excerpts framing psychological warfare. Slavery's soul theft, he thundered, beyond lash, minds broken by exploited faith. Backlash roared from planter elite, kin to Delacroix, complicit in echoes. Newspapers spewed venom, Hawthorne the Yankee agitator, motive smeared, character assassinated. Threats escalated, anonymous missives, depart or drowned, mail rifled, shadows tailing his steps. Allies withered, Father Moreau cautioned by Archbishop to shun controversy lest tides dry, Duval's patience fleeing, practice crumbling. Then, September's inferno, warehouse ablaze under starless sky, flames devouring wooden secrets. Volunteer brigades contained spread, but boxes perished, teeth reduced to ash, evidence evaporated. Accidental lantern, officials ruled. Hawthorne scoffed, arson veiled, timing divine in its convenience. Journal alone endured, safeguarded at estate, words potent, but sans tangible relics, easier buried in doubt. Isolation gripped Hawthorne, yet resolve burned brighter. October brought salvation, Joseph Marchand, venerable notary, conscience awakened. Reviewing files for elite transactions, he uncovered correspondence, 15 planters querying Jean-Baptiste's psychological methods, coded or explicit on teeth. Payments to Rousseau, exorbitant consultations, $50 to $200, far beyond fever cures, clearly for ritual implementations. Marchand led to Claude Fontaine, Rousseau's aged assistant, apothecary shelves dusty with regret. Coaxed over visits, Fontaine confessed, master saw them as livestock. Quick twist pliers here, chisel tap blood sprays, screams music to efficiency. No anesthetic, batches process like harvests, training others for fees. Order and profit, Rousseau justified, soul untroubled. The network crystallized, Jean-Baptiste pioneer, Rousseau executor, planters patrons, systematic soul-binding across Louisiana, faith weaponized for empire. Biblical parallels haunted, Pharaoh hardening hearts, or Job's afflictions, but here masters as false gods inviting true judgment. As autumn leaves fell, Hawthorne rebuilt on testimonies and documents, unquenchable truth rising from ashes. The city simmered, facade cracking. Could divine retribution manifest not in plagues, but exposure? Souls long bound stirred, demanding reckoning. New Orleans elite clung to shadows, but light pierced inexorably, chillingly, promising the chain's final shatter. Yet silence loomed potent. Would justice prevail, or power prevail in burying deeper? The teeth's ghosts whispered, redemption delayed, but never denied.
The dim apothecary shop in New Orleans' French Quarter reeked of herbs and regret, shelves lined with bottles that once held elixirs for the elite. Claude Fontaine, now in his 70s, sat hunched under flickering gaslight, his hands, once steady assistants to horror, trembling as he recounted to Elias Hawthorne the depths of Dr. Etienne Rousseau's depravity. He saw them not as men, women, children, Fontaine murmured, voice cracking like old parchment, but vessels for order. Pain was the sacrament, trauma binding mind deeper than any chain. Rousseau's technique, specialized pliers gripping enamel, chisel tapping stubborn roots, yank without anesthetic. Blood sprayed in arcs, screams echoing off sugar mill walls as batches of souls process like cane. Hundreds, Fontaine confessed, eyes distant. I held them down. Believed its service to civilization. No remorse in Rousseau, only pride in efficiency, training acolytes across Louisiana for fees that swelled his coffers. Yet the right's unraveling haunted Fontaine most. By the 1820s, whispers threaded enslaved communities, fugitives thriving north, untouched by curses, resistors falling ill from labor, not spirits. The illusion cracked teeth held no power, only man's malice. Jean-Baptiste Delacroix's journal ceased in 1823 not from enlightenment, but obsolescence. Open defiance tested the curse, escapes untracked, illnesses mundane. Fear evaporated like morning mist, productivity waned without psychological shackles. Henri Delacroix, Christophe's father, buried the boxes not solely in moral revulsion, though Fontaine sensed his disturbance, but shame. A failed alchemy of control, exposed as fraud. Retaining them mocked legacy, burial beneath quarters hid defeat, earth-swallowing reminders of hubris. Echoes of proverbs, pride before fall, divine scales tipping against false gods. Fontaine's ledger names of complicit planters, Beaumonts and Thibauts still wielding power in 1847 legislatures and councils sealed the network's breadth. Hawthorne, compiling with Marchand's notarized payments and estate archives, forged a November report, irrefutable indictment of soul theft systematized. City council chambers, oak-paneled and heavy with cigar smoke, reverberated with denial. Regrettable relic, the statement decreed, isolated under antiquated norms. No probes, no accountability, dead perpetrators shielded living heirs. Sympathy lip-serviced, action buried. Hawthorne's rage ignited purpose. Months risked threats, shadows, allies eroded, reduced to footnote? He dispatched the dossier north, Boston abolitionist presses blazoned teeth of torment, Louisiana's soul-binding atrocity. Northern editorials thundered barbarisms proof slavery corrupting masters into demons, perverting Christianity's mercy. Southern retorts snarled, Yankee lies defaming gentlemen, boxes animal bones or hoaxes. Polarization weaponized truth. Abolitionists, dehumanization incarnate. Defenders, aberration or fiction. New Orleans muted implicated clans shuttered salons, fled temporarily, lawyers brandishing defamation unsubmitted, fearing oath-bound revelations. Christophe Delacroix bore brunt. Pariah, children shunned in schoolyards, whispers of tooth-stealer blood, Elise's invitations ceased, soirees silenced. Council seat untenable, contempt from peers guarding skeletons. Resignation December 1847, exodus February 1848 to Mobile, estate auction discounted to William Hargrove, cotton tycoon untainted by Creole ghosts. Hargrove's purge, quarters razed, soil plowed, new cabins distant. Stigma erased? Physical yes, spectral no. Garden district bloomed over bones, magnolias masking unmarked graves. Hawthorne lingered a year, advocating amid isolation, practice withered, enemies multiplied. 1849 Boston return, Underground Railroad conduit, ferrying souls north. Final quarter meeting with Celeste Moreau, her shop fragrant with threads, eyes resilient steel. Truth spoken, she affirmed, changes little, yet everything. Acknowledgement honors the bound. Her tooth? Ashen warehouse inferno, relief mingled mourning, fragment of self, torments talisman, forever lost. Journal vanished with Delacroix flight destroyed? Hidden in attics? Searches 1850s abolitionist, 1870s reconstruction, fruitless. Secrets guarded by blood. Right faded swiftly, 1850s scarce mention, even abolition tracks favoring overt cruelties, whips, separations over mind's violation.
Civil War's thunder, emancipation's dawn buried it deeper. Reputations rehabilitated, victims of Yankee hate. Traces lingered. 1930s Federal Writers Project, elderly voices murmuring tooth masters claiming essences, dismissed folklore, yet echoing documented dread.
Archives whisper, vague physician payments aligning timelines, hinting broader webs awaiting excavation.
Delacroix site, manicured garden district jewel, mansion renovated, oblivious owners. Quarters plot, blooming beds, fountain murmuring over buried anguish. No plaque marks violation. Yet disturbances persist. Constructions unearth rotted bundles, teeth glimpsed, reburied hastily. Crews silent, owners averse scandal, officials complicit. New Orleans, layered secrets, facades veiling voids. Father Etienne Moreau, Josephine's confessor, ministered till 1860. Private diary, unearthed posthumously wrestled, boxes haunt. Networked horror in Christian land? Collective guilt unbearable when unveiled. Complicity tormented, church's slave ties, his silence. Dr. Armand Duval practiced shadowed, prestige eroded.
1855 death, obituary mute on roll.
Notes survived, archived medical school chilling catalog, child's infected milk tooth, monstrous justification? Compassion forsaken. Celeste Moreau endured till 1869, 90-ish.
Late tales, theft of dignity, identity's core.
Nightmares of void jaw, captive essence. Violation unending, wound unhealable, self unreturnable.
Tomb St. Louis Cemetery No. 2, Celeste Moreau, 1779–1869, free at last.
1847's flicker illuminated mechanism. Psychological chains complementing iron. Reckoning postponed, evidence ash, accountability nil. Historians ponder, how many unseen violations? Spiritual assaults undocumented, memories fragmented?
Delacroix tale warns, slavery assaulted wholeness body, mind, soul, tools exhaustive.
Unearthing demands delving discomfort, acknowledging buried indictments. Right testified cruelty's ingenuity, belief manipulated, integrity violated. Attempt failed, spirits pierced fiction, resisted. Suffering endures remembrance. Oppression's cruelest, targeting belief in self. Dark chapters hidden deliberate 1847 curtain parted briefly, slammed shut. Legacies echo, resilience unbound souls, judgment deferred yet inexorable. Divine scales balance, not haste, eternity.
In humid nights, whispers rise from soil, chattering remnants, demanding light-pierced denial.
New Orleans beauty veils judgment, truth stirs, patient as river carving stone.